The Nobel Peace Prize for 2014 is to be awarded to Kailash Satyarthi for their struggle against suppression of young people and children.
There is no greater violence than to deny the dreams of our children. I refuse to accept that the laws and constitutions are unable to protect our children. Today is the time for every child to have the right to life. I refuse to accept that the shackles of slavery can ever be more stronger than the quest for freedom. I refuse to accept here.
Getting a greeting like this is all the reward Kailash Satyarthi needs for freeing these children from a life of slavery. He tries to give these kids the childhood they missed.
Do you think these kids see you as a Nobel Peace Prize winner?
No, I don't think they see me as friend or brother or something like father. I have looked into their frightened and exhausted eyes. I've held their injured bodies and I have felt their broken spirits. I refuse to accept that children belonging to certain sections of society are born to work for others at the cost of their childhood and freedom and education.
If the children are exploited, if the children are deprived from their childhood in any part of the world cannot live in peace. The world cannot be human.
It's not often the two winners of the Nobel Peace Prize get together, but it happened yesterday when President Obama met Kailash Satyarthi. They were joined by 3 children who were rescued from child trafficking and forced marriage.
You cannot live in isolation. All the problems and solutions are interconnected. And so the problem of child labor in any part of the world is your problem.
Satyarthi organizes raids with local police. But sometimes employers are tipped off and waiting for him armed.
But I have been attacked many times in my life.
You had a gun to your head?
Literally here.
This is dangerous work, freeing these kids.
Somebody has to pay the cost for freedom. It does not come on plate. So if not me, then who else will do? Nobel Prize.
Who won the Nobel Prize, he asks. Their reply, all of us kids.
It's good. Every single minute matters. Every single child matters. Every single childhood matters.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kailash Satyarthi.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. When I read my name as keynote speaker today, I felt a little bit embarrassed. Because whenever I am with the teachers, and especially with Education International, I feel at home. So today, I'm not a speaker, but I'm one of you, and I'm sharing some of my thoughts with you as any family member or brother shares at home. Friends, I came here to thank you all. I take this opportunity to share you one simple thing, that the credit of Nobel Peace Prize does not go to Kailash Satyarthi alone. I am here to share that credit with you. I remember in 1995 or 6, when I met Fred and discussed this idea about the global march against child labor, a worldwide march. to end the worst forms of child labor and to demand for an ILO convention, where many people were laughing at me that, Kailash, you are not a politician, you are not a president or prime minister or a leader. How could you think like that? But Education International was the organization, and Fred was the leader, who said, no, Kailash, go ahead, we are with you. We succeeded not only in this ILO convention, but since then the number of child laborers globally decreased from 260 million to 168 million. So when the Nobel Committee must be considering my name, they might not be knowing that the people who are behind it is you, and you. I also remember when three of us were sitting, I felt emotional. Sylvia Borin, Fred, and myself, we went to have a lunch in a small restaurant in The Hague. And it was just before, about a year and a half before, the Dakar Summit on Education. So we were thinking that there are serious challenges. The number of out-of-school children is growing. The ODA spending on education is decreasing. In spite of the global commitment made back in 1990, Education for All in Jomtien. So a very informal conversation was so much thought-provoking that three of us came with this idea that let us build a worldwide campaign. And that has resulted in Global Campaign for Education. So I don't know that three of us ever said since then, but this became the largest ever social mobilization of teachers, students, civil society, and many more stakeholders. And as you know, that during this time, in 15 years, the number of out-of-school children has come down from almost 130 million to less than 60 million in primary age group. So we made it possible together. Dear friends, the challenges are still big. I was in a refugee camp, Syrian refugee camp in Germany some time ago. There was a boy sitting on wheelchair who lost his legs and his father in a bomb blast. He lost his mother and other family members on the way, somewhere he didn't know, coming to Europe from Syria. And I sat with him and I asked my son, what is your dream? He smiled and said that I wanted to go back to my school. The boy said, there's no safer place for me than school, my own school. He said that he wants to rebuild his country if he's educated. Friends, today, I'm asking you, if you and you are not able to fulfill the dream of this boy and millions of other girls and boys, who will do? That calls for a strong leadership. That calls for strong educators, unity, and organization. That calls for a strong Education International, undoubtedly. Dear friends, sisters and brothers, I was in a remote village in Ivory Coast Kuteva, sitting with a group of children, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. They were all having injuries on their bodies, legs and hands. I knew that they were engaged as bonded laborers, child slaves in cocoa beans production. But just to get engaged in some conversation, I asked, "How do you like chocolate?" The boys and girls looked at each other. "What is chocolate?" they asked. I said, I tried to explain, it's a sweet, tasty candy, bar. They said, "No. We have never seen, we have never tasted chocolate in our life." What a world we are living in. We all like chocolate. Most of our children love chocolate. But the children who are working at the cost of their freedom, their education, their health, and their dreams, they have no idea what chocolate is. They are producing cocoa beans. This is challenge. We all know that only 4.5 days of global military expenditure can bring all children to schools in primary and secondary classes for a year, an additional expenditure. We argue this here and here. Why the world is spending $1.6 or $1.8 trillion on defense and not $39 billion on education? When all of us know that education is enabler, equalizer, liberator, if you don't do, who will do, my friends? We have to do it. Before the politicians divide the world in walls and more walls, before they divide our minds and hearts, who will make the bridges out of this brick and mortar, if not you? Before the economy converts our young people into the parts and lubricants and fuels and tools of a big machine, what we call the growth engine, who's going to safeguard humanity? Who's going to safeguard hearts, human hearts, if not us, dear friends? These are challenges which the world is facing. Before the fundamentalist forces in the garb of religion make the world only full of fear and drive the world through fear, who will convert the world with conscience and courage and compassion? We can do it. I gave 2 examples, but there are so many examples in the world that how teachers have protected the human conscience. Of course, you are professionals. And your professional rights have to be protected by the governments, by the society, by everyone, by the institutions. But you are also the custodian of the collective moral conscience of the world. And that's why your leadership is vital. Your leadership is inevitable to make this world a better place. Dear friends, my own career began with a teaching career. After completion of my engineering, I worked as teacher. Before initiating my efforts to make this world free from exploitation of children and child slavery, I taught in university for about 2 years. So when I'm talking to you, I'm not talking as an outsider or a Nobel laureate. I belong to your fraternity. The teaching profession gave me that courage and that inspiration to take up bigger causes and bigger issues. We have to make sure that globally, education is considered fundamental human right. It is there in many constitutions, but even people think that it is a charity, it's one of the hundreds of development programs, welfare programs, or it's a commerce, business. But let us bring back that education is a fundamental right. Everybody is born with the right to freedom. Everybody is born with the right to learn. There cannot be compromise on it. This is divine right. Learning is divine right. Freedom is divine right. And it has to be established. Then the second thing I strongly feel that education, rights through education, and rights in education. In every educational institutions, schools, the rights of all children, all teachers, all workers have to be protected. And it is again the collective responsibility to protect rights within educational institutions, human rights. And thirdly, rights through education. How we are going to advance, how we are going to strengthen the human rights through education systems. You know better than me to go in all these three directions, because many of you are very, very active on it. But it requires much more sense of urgency, much more collective efforts, much more unity among us. Friends, in this context, I have launched a new campaign. We have seen the success of Global March Against Child Labor that has mobilized 15 million people on the earth. They walk together. We learn how to walk together, how to create a culture of coalition, and how to raise collective voices for the last person of society, and that is a child slave, a girl who is in slavery. 15 million teachers, children, men and women, civil society groups were mobilized. And that has resulted, as I said, in the new ILO convention, 71 president prime ministers joined hands with us on the way. When we mobilized Global Campaign for Education, we set the world record in observing Global Week of Actions. 8.5 million children and teachers and other people never came together at one time on one date for one cause. That we did in 2005. We have galvanized the support of 23 million people during the One Goal campaign. It's our collective effort. And that has helped in substantial increase of ODA funding from almost $2 billion to $3.5 billion in few years of time. The Global March, Global Campaign for Education, and One Goal campaign had helped. And now, as you know, that the children of the world have never faced so many difficulties and problems as they are facing today. 230 million children in the world are victims of multiple violence because they are living or forced to live in those countries which are war-prone, conflict areas. And they are most vulnerable to leave schooling. They are most vulnerable to be trafficked and be enslaved and be prostituted. 28 million children are seeking refuge in the world. Children are brainwashed every day. The social media is being misused by those forces in radicalizing young minds. And not only that, sometimes the boys and girls are forcibly taken away from their parents. What is happening with the Yazidi girls in Syria and some parts of Iraq?
7,000 young girls were snatched away from their parents' lap. And sometimes we read in the newspapers and see in media, a 10 or 12-year-old girl is buried alive because she could not satisfy her customers when she was sold in less than a cigarette pack price for sexual slavery. I ask, whose daughter is she? 10-year-old boys are given guns in their hands to kill the suspected traitors of ISIS. And if he cannot kill, buried alive. Whose son is he, if not ours? Today is the time, dear friends, to globalize compassion. Today is the time to show the leadership. Today is the time to challenge and fight the divide which our politicians are creating in the world. Today is the time to challenge the economy which is creating gaps and further gaps and inequalities in the society. Inequality is a violence. 8 men control half of the world's wealth. 20 years ago, the number was more than 50. It's squeezing. All the efforts are made to squeeze our hearts and minds. So let us globalize compassion which is inside each one of us. Let us break the barriers we have created and insulations we have created, the shells we have created to protect that compassion, a divine gift, only for our own biological children, sometimes our friends and relatives' children, or our parents or grandparents. Let us build a movement for compassion, and that is the globalization of citizenship. So let us begin with that, dear friends. In this campaign, 100 million for 100 million, that is the human history's largest ever, biggest ever campaign. And I have no doubt to say, I have no difficulty in saying that it is possible when I had full faith in Education International and the teachers' organizations at country level, regional level, everywhere in the world. We can reach out to them. But that is not just reaching out those children. We are going to convert them to change makers and champions for the cause of other children. 100 million children are more or less out of school. 100 million children are denied their freedom. 100 million children are facing malnutrition. 100 million children, roughly, are forced to become child brides. So 100 million young people in the world should become their spokespersons, champions, and change makers. 100 million young people in the universities, colleges, schools, when I meet them, I work across 140 countries for the last 20 years. And one thing I found everywhere in schools, that the youth are prepared, they are ready to do something and deliver something good for the society. You know better than me. Young people are hungry to prove themselves that they do exist in the world and can do better for the society. They are full with energy, full with enthusiasm, but more importantly, they have a great, deep sense of idealism. Before this idealism and the values fade away, we have to acknowledge that power which is less utilized or less tapped. Let us channelize that power to make a new world where we together can say that the world is safe, free, and educated. So through this campaign, 100 million young people are going to be the spokespersons, change makers, and champions for 100 million left out children. Their sisters and brothers who are left out and marginalized.
It would be a social media campaign. When we mobilized millions of people, dozens of millions, we did not have social media. Now it's very fast, we can do it. They would also be asked and inspired, encouraged to take up issues in their locality, in their countries, and globally by being of volunteers and so on. We wanted to create child-friendly schools, child-friendly communities, child-friendly cities, and that can be done only through you, where the children feel safe and get good quality free education as their fundamental human rights. So, I conclude with one, just inviting you, calling upon you to join in one major activity which we are going to take up. That is, politicians go back to their schools campaign, the part of 100 million campaign. I was in Dhaka 3 weeks ago and addressed the Interparliamentary Interparliamentary Union, which is an official body of parliamentarians. There were about 2,000 parliamentarians from 130 countries. So I gave them this call, that one day you should go back to your schools where you studied in primary and secondary. You should feel the pulse of children. You should feel the pulse of society, and more importantly, the teachers. What teachers are aspiring? What are their difficulties? What are the difficulties of children? Let the parliament members and the politicians go to school for a few hours, an hour at least. And that is on 18th of October. 18th of October this year. Parliamentarians go back to school. It's a sensitization and education for them. It is to showing them mirror. It is to getting them involved for the bigger cause to protect human rights of children and teachers and society. So that is on 18th. I am prepared to sign a joint letter. Of course, Suzanne is here, and Fred is here, and all good friends. Haldis is here, Davis is here. If I start naming, I can name at least 50 of my old friends who worked for this. So we can write joint letters on behalf of the national unions or Education International to the politicians, the parliamentarians, and invite them to come to school. I will sign also with you on it. Would you like this idea? Oh God, you're so slow. The teachers have to show the power. You have to show the power. Say yes or no. Even no. When you, I was a teacher when I was teaching in my university, and if I speak slowly, then the engineering students were very naughty, and so I have to be a little louder. So yes or no? Yes. So do you agree to join the 100 million campaign? In your country? Yes. And inviting politicians to come to school? Yes. Raise your hands. Raise your hands, only then I could see. I cannot hear you properly, please. This is a call from your brother. Raise both your hands, because I could, oh good, God. Thank you so much. We together is going to make this world a safer and beautiful place. This is the time, dear friends. Today is the day. Some of the best brains, the most passionate people, the most intelligent and wise people are sitting in this room. No better place can be better than this. Let us march, my dear friends. Let us march from ignorance to education. Let us march now from mortality to divinity. And let us march from hatred and divide and narrowness to the path of righteousness and universality and globalization. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.